They say the truth is the number one stopper. They say you think, but you never want to speak up. They say you're hiding there, you're busy, but what's on your mind, kid? What's on your mind, kid? They say out loud, never.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. This is episode number 46.
That's right.
46.
And this is coming to you live before a studio audience.
They're just off camera.
So when you
Wave,
hear
everybody.
when you hear laughter and applause, that is real. That is not a sound effect that has been added in afterwards. We are a podcast about board games, the latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends, even when you're losing. And that's Mark and Neilan, my
Hi.
co-hosts,
Hey.
who frequently are the losers or losing. I've been told I'm too negative sometimes, so I'm working on it. Today, we are starting a very special series, and this series is our top 50 games of all time. So that means today we will be discussing games number 50 through
41.
You've been asking for it. We want to tell you our favorite games. We're excited to talk about them. Why don't we just jump right in?
All right. I'll start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So my number 50. This is one of four co-op games on my list.
There's only four?
There's only four.
Sorry, I buried the lead there.
And this is Dungeon Fighter. Dungeon Fighter is a dexterity dungeon crawl game. What you're doing is you and your teammates are trying to get through a dungeon, and the way you fight the monsters, you're trying to get to the big boss at the end. The way you fight the monsters is you bounce dice off the table onto a bullseye. And the closer you get to the center of the bullseye, the more damage you do to the monsters. And you can pick up equipment that make you more powerful, but it also might make you throw the dice in a weird way, like from under the table or using like your teammates' hands, a lot of crazy stuff. But I just love it because it has led to some of the most exciting moments I've ever had in gaming. Like, it's a really hard game. And sometimes, like, we've been eliminated in the very first room because sometimes monsters force you to throw the dice in a certain way and we just can't get it and we're just dead before we even started. But more than one occasion it's come to a point where we need this throw to be a bullseye and everybody's on edge, everybody's watching the board and nobody actually believes it's going to happen, and then they get the person who throws the dice gets the bullseye and the whole table erupts, and it's just like an amazing moment. So for me, number 50 is Dungeon Fighter.
The 50th best game of all time,
Is Dungeon Fighter. It's right here in black and white.
It's written out and it's official.
That's right.
Mark made a lot of notes to try to make himself sound super smart.
I didn't need notes.
I
I just
I'm
have
just
all the knowledge up here.
All right,
Mark.
well,
have you tried?
no pressure then.
Yeah.
If you have all the knowledge, let's see you.
Should I go next?
Sure.
Okay, my number 50 is Werewords. We spoke about this recently. This is sort of, I think, superseded Insider for me. The premise of the game is you have a hidden werewolf and you have a mayor. And the mayor is going to be giving a clue, a word, that the rest of the team on the village have to try guess by asking a series of questions, sort of 20 question style. The werewolf knows what the word is as well and is trying to deceive the other players of the table by sort of leading them astray. And if at the end of the game the villagers can figure out who the werewolf is, then they win. Otherwise, the werewolf can identify the seer who also knows who the word is and is trying to help the village, and then the werewolves will win. So it's this balance of sort of like trying to get towards a specific word and trying to like either lead or help your team astray without being too obvious about it. It's a pretty light sort of social deduction game. It's very easy to play. You can play it with non-gamers, seem to get it pretty quickly. It's a really, really good one.
Yeah, a really nice app integration.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. That's Werewords.
I think that this is good for non-gamers is a bit misleading. I think that essentially 20 questions with a hidden traitor is a brilliant concept, but I think that the roles in Werewords can be quite complicated, and understanding who's winning or losing and what you're supposed to be doing for a non-gamer. I mean, is One Night Ultimate Werewolf great for non-gamers?
I think it is.
So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I've had great success with it.
So the funny thing is, I've tried Werewords recently with a group of non-gamers, and it has that resistance problem where the first game goes horribly awry, but then on game 2 or 3, everyone gets it, and the game lasts 4 minutes. So it's like it's not even like a half-hour game of resistance where that lead up is so much longer. So I think the rough edges get worn off pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a great game. My number 50th best game of all time. I don't even know how to say this.
You got there.
Is Agricola. There are not too many medium, heavy-ish Euro, and funny, saying it's a heavy Euro is going to trigger some people who say it's not a heavy Euro. It's not
Right.
A Lacerda game, certainly. Agricola is a fantastic worker placement game by Uwe Rosenberg. This is the quintessential feed your people game. I don't love everything about Agricola, but what I do love about Agricola is how tight the action spaces are. Every single turn, it's agonizing to figure out if you need the wood or if you need the reed, what you're trying to get. And I think what makes that even better is that in between turns, the spaces that are not chosen stock up on that resource to the point where it's just you see that 6 wood and you know that you're going to try to get it, and but you know someone else also wants it.
Yeah.
And so you have to have your first choice and your backup choice, and sort of maneuvering around that board. I have not found a better worker placement game for me than Agricola with that tight tension. Some of the card play is less interesting for me personally. There's too many cards, in my opinion, but I still have yet to find, and I'm still looking for a replacement for Agricola that is more about on the board worker placement with that agonizing decision space.
Yeah, I mean, Agricola would be higher up on my list if it just wasn't for the fact that I've mentioned this before, that I've played it a couple times with people who are just fantastic at it. And a game that brutal, when you're playing with people who are way better than you, is just, it lends for a rough experience.
Yeah, I think having not played it for a couple of years and coming back and beating Dan on my first play back.
Oh, did you really? Oh,
Yeah,
great.
I beat Dan and Dean, and it was a triumph.
That's awesome.
So that might be coloring
great.
it and helping it sneak in onto the list here.
All right, so 49 on my list. This is one of 3 titles from 2018 that's on my list. And now this will be 2 of 4 co-op titles on my list. So 2 games in and already halfway through all my top 50 co-ops. This is Chronicles of Crime. So this is a murder mystery sort of whodunit co-op where you're trying to solve a mystery. The hook with this is that it has VR implementation and a really nice app that goes along with the game. It's very intuitive. It's one of the parts I like the best about the game is that, you know, you want to question a suspect. All you do is you scan him in the app and you talk to him. If you want to ask him about a murder weapon, you scan him, scan the weapon, and you're done. The stories so far, the ones I've done have been good. And the VR aspect of it where when you investigate a crime scene and you're looking for clues, you actually put these little VR clips on your phone and you look around and try to pick up on clues, and you're shouting out to your teammates what you're seeing, and they're like taking notes and stuff. This is sort of, I know Sherlock Holmes wasn't really going for this. Obviously the Sherlock Holmes is over 20 years old, but this is like what I wanted from a murder mystery whodunit sort of game. I think it's just like incredibly smoothly designed and just, again, very intuitive. You never find yourself like figuring out what you push on the app and stuff like that. So yeah, Chronicles of Crime, fantastic. My number 49.
I'm pretty confident I would love this. I just haven't tried it yet.
Absolutely.
I heard the words app and VR.
Is it even a board game?
Certainly sounds like a board game. One of the 50 best of all time.
Of all time. Just released.
No.
Believe it or not.
Okay, my number 49 is a game. I don't know if you've heard about this, Mark. It's called Scriptorium.
Sorry.
It was re-released as Biblios.
Okay.
Biblios is a really, I mean, I think we've spoken about Biblios more times. Yeah, a couple of times. We've mentioned it here and there.
Yes.
It's a game that mixes hand management and an auction phase. It's pretty simple to teach. It's a fast game that I think has a lot of very interactive elements that I like, and it's a great little game. We joke about it all the time, but it's legitimately fantastic.
So, this is supposed to be the 50 through 41 part of the list. This is not 10 through 1.
Oh, sorry, weird. It's, yeah.
So
it barely didn't make it onto my list. I know.
This
admin
game
error.
was made by the Board Game Barrage podcast's second favorite doctor. We have
That's
other
fair.
doctors that we prefer. I can't believe this is actually on your list, man.
Wait, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's fine.
It's good, though.
Mark's enthusiasm for it is fake.
Is
I-
fake? How dare you? It's fake. I thought you were going to say infectious.
Well, yeah, fake. Yeah, I can see how you'd be confused there.
That is not right.
It's definitely one of my favorite on these sort of like low-end, quick,
Filler
easy
plus.
to play. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a great game. It has a incredible theme, guys. So if you like
Exactly.
thematic gameplay.
Scripts and scribes.
You like monks.
Yeah.
This is the game for you.
My number 49th best game of all time, 49, I'll never... Yeah, we're not going to get there, is a Concept. This is a fantastic party game where someone is given a word and they are using this board and placing markers on it to try to help everyone in the room guess what it is. So they place a marker on the color blue and then they indicate how big of a size it is. There's different markers that mean different things. So if it's placed here, it's not that thing or it is like this thing. Concept is approaching an activity in terms of is it a board game or not. I think the way that we play it is honestly we just have someone go and then everyone's trying to guess what it is. We don't necessarily score in Concept, but I think this is an underappreciated one of those games. There's a lot of games in this vein, you know, Word Slam and a bunch of other ones that sort of do a similar thing. But Concept just feels really nice to me. I really enjoy it, and it's deserving to be on the list.
Yeah, I love Concept. I've heard it referred to as like charades for writers, which is sort of apt.
That's interesting.
But yeah, I think Concept is a fantastic game for sure.
Yeah, my only detraction would be that the game, it feels like it's a solid base set of mechanics in search of a better game. Like I say, I think it works better as an activity than it does as an actual game, but I don't think that's a knock against it necessarily.
But we've added VR to
that's fair.
Mark's favorite board game,
Right.
so I think we can allow it.
That's fair.
Okay, so let's stick to the party game theme. My number 48 is designed by
Don't do it.
Neilan.
Oh, of Vlada Chvatil.
Vlada Chvatil. This is Pictomania. I'm going to say that this is for the first edition. I'm still not 100% sold on the second one just yet. I know you guys are both fans of it. Pictomania has a really simple premise. It's a party game, as I mentioned, and all you're trying to do is you are trying to draw things to have the rest of the people at the table guess, but you're simultaneously guessing their drawings while you're doing that. So you're both drawing and guessing in real time simultaneously. It's just frantic, crazy people shouting about how terrible your drawing is, draw faster, and you're doing this all with a timed aspect, because if you're the first person to make all your guesses, you can potentially get some bonus points. And the words that you use to draw, I love how the words escalate. Like the easy level words are like basketball, football, soccer ball that you can pick from. But then when you go to the advanced, it's like who, thought, like time. And so you get really abstract and crazy. It's just a ton of fun. Everybody likes drawing games. I think it's an easy sell. And this is just, drawing game on steroids. So Pictomania is my number 48.
I really like Pictomania. I think in the same way that Neilan dislikes Concept for being sort of less of a game, I think Pictomania is too much of a game. Like there's a little bit too much going on there. Okay. Pictomania 2.0 scales it back just a smidgen, which I really like, but it's sort of like you're almost doing two different games at once, and it feels a little over-designed in the same way that I would say over-designed is probably not the right thing, but Werewords is a similar critique from me. These are great games, but they're more gamery than I would like them to be.
Right.
Personally.
I get that. Yeah.
But this one is very... It's harsh. It's very tense.
Stressful.
It's very stressful. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. I am almost too stressed out playing Pictomania, which is a surprise for me.
Yeah, it's a sort of stress I really, really like. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah.
My number 48 is a game that probably would have been a lot higher on my list if you asked me a year or two ago. It's Mage Knight. Mage Knight is another Vlada game, actually. It's an extremely heavy sort of role-playing game that I've mostly played cooperatively, but you could play competitively. It has a bunch of scenarios that change up the way it works. It has a very cool deck-building hand management system to the way the combat works. And it's characterized by turns just being this really intense puzzle that you have to sort of solve. Like, okay, I have this hand of cards. What is the best I can do with these on this turn, given like what's on the table and what the resources I have available? The biggest hit against Mage Knight is it's an extremely long, extremely heavy game that I feel I need to relearn every single time I play it.
It's very like dense rules-wise,
It's very dense. Like there are a lot of little elementals and creatures that sort of have slightly different effects, and it's just a lot to sort of keep in your head, and it takes about 4 hours to play. Yeah. It's like an afternoon game. Right. Like that's what you're doing for the day.
Right.
And I just can't justify that anymore. Like it's a game I want to like a lot more than I actually practically have the time ever to play. It reminds me a lot of one of my favorite video games, Heroes of Might and Magic. It's just that sort of heroes moving around a map, gathering troops, and it's
there was
really
a
cool
Star
idea.
Trek.
Yeah, they redid it in
edition.
the Star Trek theme, weirdly enough. Yeah.
I've heard that it didn't really like make some of the changes people were hoping for. Like
I think
really
I don't think they really changed much on the rules side. It was just
more
basically
like
a re-theme. Yeah.
Does this feel like one that's on your list, sort of as like a landmark you really want to have it represented?
Sort of
It's a little bit of both. It's a game that if you had asked me, like I said, a year ago, would have been probably one of my favorite games. I think it's just slipping off my list with time.
Totally.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
My number 48
Every time this is literally an
Well,
hour.
I don't
time.
understand. No one is.
My 48th favorite game.
Oh, that's nice.
Just come to me whenever you have questions.
My
In general.
48th favorite game is called Hanamikoji.
Oh, this is great.
There are a couple of great two-player games on my list. This is the first one. This is a quick dueling type game. Well, dueling is the wrong word. A la Battle Line is probably the most famous, or Lost Cities,
Yeah.
where you're sort of playing cards in a row and trying to win the favor of these geishas. I wouldn't look too much into the theme. There's beautiful artwork, but every turn is agonizing. You only have 4 actions that you can choose from each round. And some of those actions are sort of split some of the cards into your hand into 2 piles, and then your opponent gets to take their pile first. And then another one is you have 3 cards that you put out, and they get to choose 1 to keep, and you get to keep the other 2. And so you're sort of trying to figure out how to get the cards played onto your side. What I love about the game is that none of your actions are just play a card on your side.
Right.
You know, the one thing you really want to do. It's sort
Right.
of save this card for the end, discard and, trash cards out of the game. It's very simple, very clever, very, very tight. Every round feels like you could just go off the deep end and lose it. That's Hanamikoji.
It's fantastic. I love Hanamikoji. The only reason it's not higher on my list is just because it's 2 players strictly, but I think it's fantastic. Every choice in that game, it's short, but every choice is
Agonizing.
So
Yeah.
agonizing. Yeah, I love it. All right, my number 47 is by Fatal Lacerda from Vinos and Galeris and Lisboa fame. This is Kanban. So Kanban is a game where you are working in a car factory. You're implementing every stage of car design from the designs to rolling them off the factory line. Like all Vital Lacerda games, this is like a very intricate puzzle. Each aspect of the factory, from the design to gathering the parts to building the cars to just everything, is just, it's like clockwork. Every little part affects every other part, and there's just so many decisions and there's so many ramifications for every decision you make. It's a quite intricate, quite complicated puzzle of a game. Quite heavy, I'd say. But I just love how everything, again, just fits into place. How every decision can affect other decisions. And I just love that. It's one of the more puzzly games on my list. And it's just the puzzle is designed so wonderfully. So for me, number 47 is Kanban by Vital Lacerda.
My number 47 game is Splendor. This is another one that I love just because it's so easy. It's a game I take home whenever I see my family because my mom loves it. It's a game that's so easy to teach and so easy to play and feels satisfying whenever you play it. It's just got the lightest little bit of engine building to it. The tactility of the chips is so appealing. The components look like running them through your fingers, Kalen.
I mean, I see your hands.
Yeah, I'm just doing it mentally right now. Just thinking of them. But yeah, it's a game that feels great to play because of the components. It's just got enough to get you thinking. I've said famously I'm quite bad at it, weirdly enough, but I still love it. It's a game that I sort of wish was maybe more compact. I think the box is bigger than it could be for a game that I want to be, that I want to take everywhere with me. But I like it a whole lot.
I've seen some people who've I think 3 printed out.
Yeah.
They've been really cool because you can fit the entire game in a really small package.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
I'm tempted to do that for
Yeah.
the exact reason because even right now I'm thinking of packing it on a vacation and it's almost too big for what it is. But yeah, it's that's Splendor.
Something about the anti-Splendor crowd I really like. This game seems to invite a lot of people who say, I just don't get it. You don't do anything in this game, and I love trolling them. There's just something. It's a great game.
Mm-hmm.
But it does invite a lot of people who say I don't understand what this game is or
Right.
why this would be fun. It's not as immediately interesting, I'd say. It's not as bright and flashy as some
Right.
of
No.
the newer filler games. I love this one.
But that engine builds.
And
is
th-
Oh no,
bigger.
no,
And that's it.
It's
Yeah,
higher.
no,
It's
yeah,
higher on
yeah.
my list than it is
Right.
Oh.
on his. But
Okay.
it's just it's such a weird one thinking
Yeah.
about why people don't like it or why they're
Right.
so anti.
I'm always looking for a Splendor killer.
And that's
That's
what I was
right.
going to
That's
say.
true.
Everyone seems to say that another game comes along. Oh, this kills Splendor
Yeah.
for me. And then I play them all and I'm like,
Not
nah,
quite.
Yeah,
I'm
haven't
going to
got
keep
there.
playing Splendor.
Yeah.
What number are we on?
This
We are
is
no-
47.
47.
Yeah, I was gonna say 46, so I'm glad I checked.
So how do you start this?
My 46th favorite
47th.
game. No, my 47th favorite game of all time is Ingenious. Is this by the Doctor?
This
By
is
the
by
way,
the Doctor.
you wouldn't even expect it, and he's there
Yeah.
designing games. Ingenious takes some of the things that I love about Scrabble and then adds it into shapes. You're sort of just placing shapes on the board. They're in two sections, so you've got a circle connected to a star, and you can only play it in certain ways. The scoring is quite weird and even hard to explain, but I've had a ton of fun playing this game as 4-player 2-on-2. I really like playing in that team mode. Is that the only mode? I don't even know.
You could probably just play a 2-player, I would think.
Yeah, I think that's how I've predominantly played it. This is
same.
one that comes home with me every Christmas that I can get my mom into, so I'm excited about that coming up. It's just a pretty game. It's super simple, straightforward. That's Ingenious by the good old Dr. Reiner Knizia, the one true and living doctor.
Well, speaking of the Doctor, he is the designer of my 46th game. My number 46 is one of the oldest games on my list, having been released in 1998. This is Samurai by Dr. Reiner Knizia. Get like with all Knizia games, simple rule set, but very deep in terms of tactics, specifically tactics in Samurai, but also strategy. What it is, it's a board of Japan separated into little hexes. You're going after 3 different types of resources. I think they're rice paddies, Buddhas, and helmets. So those are the 3 things you're trying to get, and they're sprinkled along the map. And wherever they are, wherever these resources are, they you score them, or you take them, or your opponent takes them once they've been encircled. So what you're doing is on your turn, you're playing a hex from your hand to the board that often represents the 3 resources. So I might put a 3 rice paddy hex next to the rice paddy that's on the board, and once the rice paddy has been encircled, whoever has more rice paddy points gets that unit. And then at the end of the game, like with all Knizia games, the end game scoring is not just straightforward, it's nuanced. It's about getting the most majorities, and then if not, whoever has the most other second. So you're not trying to just get all of one type. You want to make sure you're balanced when it comes to picking up these 3 resources. Anyway, it just screams Knizia. It's, again, just so easy to describe, but there's so much to it. This is a game where you don't have to you're not always thinking about what the rules are. You know the rules. The rules are very straightforward, and it's all about planning your turns and reacting. This is a very reactive game.
Do you think that we would like it? I've not played it.
I haven't tried it either.
Yeah, I think you'd love it.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, this is, if you like Knizia games, this is prototypical Knizia.
Something about the way you describe you're all fighting over feudal Japan, and you're trying to collect helmets and rice paddies.
Right. Well,
instead of military.
Right. Well, no, I think
the way you said it.
It represents. Yeah, it's like religion is the Buddhas, and rice paddies is economy, and
it's just helmets. There's
helmets.
just a run for
that's right.
for helmets in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
If you'd known your history, you'd have known that.
I do want to try this. It's a little on the longer side, right?
No, not at all. It's
Oh,
quite
really?
short. It's quite short.
I'm thinking of something else, but let's do it.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's stop right now.
For sure.
My number 46 game is Clank. And you know it's good because it's got an exclamation mark in the title.
Right.
It's right there. It's Clank.
Is this Clank or one of the 77
Oh,
spin-offs?
right, yeah. They're doing Clank Legacy now.
Are they really?
Yeah, they are, I think.
Oh, my God.
Unless I imagine that. Anyway, so this is Clank. This is original Clank. I actually heard Clank in Space is the preferred version. I have not played that sufficiently. Clank is a really good press your luck dungeon exploration deck building game. So if you imagine a deck builder where you start with a few basic moves, a few basic sort of cards that allow you to buy new cards, and by buying new cards, you're getting the ability to move further in the dungeon, fight more monsters, do cool little abilities that will move you around the dungeon. And the aim is in pushing further into the dungeon to get one of the artifacts for points and get back out.
I'm showing Kalen where I have Clank on my list.
Wow.
It almost made the top 400.
It's sort of on that borderline of being quite easy to teach. It's certainly not a non-game game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's got enough fun in very relatively simple mechanics. And the joy is in once you sort of get your artifact and trying to get back to the surface before this mechanic sets in where the dragon starts eating everyone at the tables.
I'm trying to figure out what you call a game that I have a ton of fun playing, and everything about it seems fun, for lack of the idea that you're trying to escape, and then that puts a timer on other players, the deck building, all of that. The theme is fun, but the deck building itself is not that interesting.
Yeah.
And it actually, the experience of Clank is better, in my opinion, than the sum of sort of the different mechanisms.
I think
Somehow it
that's
sort
fair.
of comes together in a way that I enjoy it, but I'm kind of looking at it like this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like almost every part of it, like I feel could be slightly better designed. Like you said, like the deck building could be more like synergistic. The layout of the map could be slightly better, but it just works as an experience because once everyone's frantically like a few steps away from getting out and that, you know, timer effectively is ticking down. It just always has a really strong finish to me.
I just wish the board was like modular. Just the fact that the board is like static and
Isn't that Clank
so
in
that's
Space?
Clank in Space does that. Yeah.
45?
45. No, 46.
No, you're 46.
46.
My 46th favorite game of all time is Evolution. Evolution is widely variable in its player count, 2 to 6, I believe. This is a evolution-themed game where you're taking animal species and you're making them carnivores or herbivores, and you're giving them traits like the ability to climb trees, and then you are fighting with the other... You're fighting with the other players.
Clank looks a lot better.
Than Evolution? Well, did you get? Did I wreck you?
477.
Why don't you? Let's look at the play and see how many points I beat you by, because it was probably a lot.
We have never played Evolution.
I don't know about that, dude.
All right.
What's cool about Evolution is you can sort of try to go with an herbivore strategy, but then another player goes carnivore. Suddenly you have to adapt to what they're doing. If you have too many carnivores on your side, they'll actually eat your own species if there's no one else to eat. So there's sort of this adaptation mechanism the entire time you're having to figure out what everyone is going after. This has some of my favorite illustrations in all of board gaming. It has, for some reason, the feeling of almost a collectible card game dueler, like almost Magic the Gathering-like, but it's obviously not. I really enjoy this game. It has Evolution Climate, which I still have not played. It's on my shelf of shame. There's a new version of this coming out, Oceans, I think the C version next year, so I'm excited to check that out, but obviously I should probably play Climate first.
Are Climate and Oceans like, not substantially, but sort of different games?
So the way they do it is that each expansion there's another expansion, Flight, and you play the base game plus one expansion. Oceans is going to be the start of a new system.
Okay.
So I think they're trying to refine it a little bit. There's some rough edges, but Climate, every action you take changes you towards an ice age or towards like a heat wave, and that can kill certain types of species who are better or more or less adapted to suit that. It's good. I'm actually surprised you don't like it more.
I guess I just had a couple bad plays of it. I liked the idea of it, but for whatever reason, it just didn't come together a couple times that I played it. So, but I'd give it another shot for sure.
Gonna move it on up that list.
We got to try.
Do you actually have a piece of paper that has every board game you've ever played?
Yeah.
In order in which you like it?
All the way down to
what is the lowest?
637.
I think this is
which was Unspeakable Words. I did not like that game.
Neilan, this is where we looked at camera Jim Halpert style and sort of just like, he admits just what? Where it's like Michael Scott says something really dumb and then it just zooms in on their face.
We need that smash zoom, totally.
Yeah. Intern, just go ahead and zoom in on their faces right now.
We can just have the studio audience do it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Somebody just get up and... my number 45 is from one of my favorite publishers, What's Your Game? Whenever I see a title by What's Your Game, it's usually going to be pretty good. And this is one of my favorites of theirs. Actually, my favorite of theirs. This is ZhanGuo. ZhanGuo combines very straightforward Euro insofar as you're putting workers on the board, you're trying to get area majority on things, you're trying to move up tracks. But it also has a really interesting multi-use cards with a hand management aspect to it. You've got these cards every turn you play a card. You can either play it to the board to trigger actions, or you can play it to your tableau in order to strengthen the action. So you're trading off strengthening actions but not actually doing anything, as opposed to playing the card on the board and doing something but it's maybe not so strong. It's just, again, very well designed. It's very streamlined. It's a very well made Euro. It scratches that Euro itch really well, but it's got this really nice hand management aspect, and it's just the way that these two things are blended together. It's just really what really does it for me. And I also love, it's got the ancient Japan theme, and the board is really well done. All of What's Your Game's titles, I think, are aesthetically pleasing. But yeah, ZhanGuo, solid Euro, solid hand management, multi-use cards, everything done very well together. It's maybe not remarkable in any one aspect, but the way they all come together, I just love it. So 45 for me is ZhanGuo.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard of that at all.
Yeah, good one.
My number 45 game is Innovation.
This is a travesty that it's this low.
That's this low. Yeah, I feel like it would be a lot higher if I would play it a lot more. I played it a few times, but I think it's one of those games that's going to grow the more familiar you get with the cards. So the way this works is it's a tableau building card game where you have 10 sort of ages of cards. And the cards you start with are on age 1, and you're sort of laying them out in one of different ways in the way that other Chuddick games work. They're sort of multi-use to some extent. And then each card sort of has an ability and sort of symbols on it and gives you access to future ages, either when that age deck runs out, so then you move on to age 2, or you might skip a couple of ages to get powerful cards. But the power jump in the cards between different ages is pretty powerful. So every time you get a new card, it's this great feeling of like, wow, this is cool. And because it's also that there are not very many like variants on the same thing. Each one is a pretty unique, interesting effect. So it's this cool moment of discovery when you get a new card every single time. And then you just think like, wow, how am I going to use this? This is going to be crazy. You combine it with another card you have, and you just keep hitting that over and over again. Yeah, this is a really cool game. It's one of my favorite little 2-player compact card games. And it's the sort of game that I can definitely see climbing up my list if I were to play it a lot more and sort of get to know the cards a lot better.
Carl Chudyk is one of my favorite designers in the way that he feels different than many of the modern board game designers. It feels like you were trying to control chaos. Every turn has this sort of very tactical situation that you have to react to, as opposed to some long-term engine builder where you're sort of planning out your turns from turn 1. You know, it's like at the other end, you have like Tzolk'in where you're planning 8 moves ahead. This is like a chess match. Innovation is fantastic, and you'll see it way, 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 way higher on my list.
And not on my list at all.
That is
A flaw.
This is brought to you by the man who loves a game about monks collecting colored
It
books.
hasn't been on my list. How do you know?
Yeah, it may not even be
Yeah.
on his list, Kalen.
Look at
It's
his notes,
assumptive.
guys. Just see who you'd rather play board games with.
Oh, look, I can back it up.
That is Innovation, my number 45.
My number 45, best game of all time, is Mysterium. Mysterium is a game that is full of really surreal illustrations on tarot-sized cards, and you are using those cards to pass out clues to help the team solve a murder mystery of sorts. The player handing out the cards is a ghost. The theme doesn't really make sense, but it's vaguely spooky, which is fun. Yeah. And you're trying to guide the players to a person, a place, and the murder weapon,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
What's fun about this is you can play with complete non-gamers as long as you are the ghost. And so they have 6 locations that they're staring at, and you hand them a picture of a dog jumping over the moon, and they have to sort of connect that to one of those 6 locations that seriously have nothing to do with what you handed them. You can hand people multiple cards. You're sort of trying to read between the lines. This is one where you can't communicate at all except through the passing of these cards. This is sort of on the list as well for Dixit, which is a great game, but I love these games that use the beautiful illustrations. Muse is another one that uses them. But Mysterium has worked the best for me, and I've had some fantastic games with my family of Mysterium.
It's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty close to being on my list. I like it a lot.
And it's one that I've taken to like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's always been a hit with family and friends, non-gamers. All right, back in 98, as I mentioned, the Doctor came out with Samurai the next year, 1999. He came out with my number 44 game. This is Raw. This is one of his most classic auction games. Raw is a auction game with a push your luck element. One of my favorite things about Raw is the simple but really tight bidding structure for the auctions. There are 16 tiles, numbered 1 to 16, and at the beginning of every round, you get 4 tiles, and so those are the only 4 tiles that you're bidding with. So there's not much to worry about in terms of whether or not you're making a correct bid or not. There's only 4 to choose from, and whenever you win a lot, you're winning a lot of tiles that score you points, but you're also winning another bidding tile. So they're 1 to 16, so the bidding tile 10 may be part of an auction, and I may win it with using my number 4 tile. So then I get the 10 tile for the next round of auctions, and my 4 tile becomes part of the next lot of auctions. So it's a very tight auction game. Again, like all Kinitsu games, the rules are there's not much rules to consider or to worry about. A quick explanation, and you pretty much have it. And yeah, it's just I just think it's a fantastic auction game and one of the best around. It's Raw by Reiner Knizia, my number 44.
Okay. My number 44 is Puerto Rico. This is definitely, a classic. It's a game about...
It's not 30 years old, Neilan. It can't be
It
a
can't be a
classic.
classic, yeah. I feel like, I
Get
think
off my lawn.
People, seem to be quite finicky about that. Anyway, the way this works is there are 6 or 7 roll cards, I forget, and on your turn, you're choosing one of them, and you get generally to either do a more powerful version of that action, and then everyone else gets to do a slightly weaker version. And those are actions like building buildings or sort of growing food, selling your stuff to market. So you're sort of creating these plantations and these factories, and those produce resources. And then you might take the trade action where you would sell those to the market to get a certain amount of money, or put those on a ship to get victory points. But those market spots on those ships are particularly tight because I think there are only 4 slots in the market. Every resource has to be different there. And then once someone starts a specific resource on a ship, only that resource can be used there. So it's about getting the resource onto a ship or the market at the time you need to. So timing becomes important. And you kind of want to do all of these different actions in different combinations and orders. So trying to find the right time to take that role before someone else does can be really, really important. It's a game I like a whole lot. I played it a bunch when I first learned it, and then played it a whole lot more like in the digital version, like on iOS. And
That's in VR, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's our board game future.
Was that versus AI?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I was playing with against friends and sometimes against the AI. Yeah.
Which friends?
Well, what do you mean? My other friends? My better friends?
Never heard of them. But seriously, do you have other games on your list that in this action selection sort of Race for the Galaxy, San Juan,
I
Glory
actually
to Rome?
don't. No, I haven't played San Juan. I want to. Race for the Galaxy is a game that I think I would have liked a lot if I played it under different circumstances. I think at the times I played it, I was playing with a bunch of expansions of people that were substantially better than me. And, it's a game that takes a little bit to get your head around because of the way the iconography works. And I think if I had been playing it on a level playing field, I probably would have gotten into it a lot better. But yeah, for whatever reason, it just didn't quite click with me the same way. That feels like one of my biggest deficiencies in the game that I probably would like, but just haven't given enough of a chance to.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, that was Puerto Rico, 44.
My number 44, best game of all time, is New Angeles. New Angeles is a very long negotiation game. The reason that this is not higher on my list is, I repeat, it's very long. What's so fascinating about this game is that there are multiple players who can win, but how you win is just by beating someone else. So I could get a card that says you win if you have more points than Mark at the end of the game. Neilan could have a card that says you win if you have more points than Christina. And so trying to look around and figure out what everyone is arguing for without being too obvious about what you're arguing for is fun. I think there are other negotiating games where it's super clear. Like Mark is known to never make a trade that doesn't benefit him more than you. Or it can never be equal with Mark, whereas Neilan and I are more willing to sort of work together and do just, this will help us both the same. And that problem, it's not a problem, but that doesn't exist in New Angeles because everyone, what they're trying to do is different. I could care less if Neilan became the best player on the board and won by 30 points because that has nothing to do with my win condition. That's what makes New Angeles so special. It is a lot of negotiating and arguing, and it goes on too long. Fantasy Flight, this is a call out to you. Please make a 2-hour version of this game, and I will plug it everywhere, every day.
That would be great.
Yeah, I really like this game, but it's the issue you're talking about. It's just way too long. Yeah, half the time it would have been a much better game.
I think the thing I like about it most is that mechanic you described where you just have to beat one other player. Yeah. It's one of those things I wish I would see more games do. Like, I keep trying to think of ways you could shoehorn it into other games. Just a simple, like, multiple people can win as long as you're beating one other person at the table. And that's very clever. Well,
and it just does away with sort of the base foundation of a competitive board game, which is to win, score the most points.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's just different than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that makes it cool and worthy of being in the top 50 list over games that need VR apps to qualify as board games.
My number 43 is from Mike Fitzgerald of Baseball Highlights 2045 and Richard Borg of Command and Colors and Memoir 44. This is Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp is part of the Mystery Rummy series. It's a rummy-based game, which is one of the reasons I like it because people tend to be familiar with rummy games. So in this game, the different suits of cards are tied to different outlaws, and you are trying to capture the outlaws in order to get the rewards that accumulate on the outlaws the longer and longer they go uncaptured. And what you do is playing cards to your tableau. You need to play a total of 8 capture points for any one outlaw in order to trigger a scoring or distribution of the rewards. But you can't start accumulating those capture points until one person plays at least 6 points at one time to start. So, for example, if I'm going after Billy the Kid, I may play 6 capture points on him to start it, and now that it's open, Neilan or Kalen can start playing a point at a time or whatever they want to do. And as long as 8 points have been accumulated on him at the end of the round, then the rewards will be dispersed based on whoever has the most capture points and so on. So this allows for a couple things I really like about this game. One is a negotiation aspect. Because you need to get to 8 points, you can sort of negotiate with the players around the table in order to try to get them to help contribute to that 8 points. And the other thing is that you can also attack players. So if I see that Kalen has all 8 points or 10 points on one of the outlaws, you can play a card to nullify that. So there's 2 ways to sort of approach the interactivity of the game, which I really like. And the other thing I like is it's got a simple rule set, which is draw 2 cards and then play 1 card and discard a card. And the reason I like that is when you draw cards, you can draw cards both from the draw pile or from the discard pile. And so because you're forced to discard a card every turn, and because your opponent can draw a card you've just discarded, it makes for tough decisions because you have a relatively small hand size. So whenever you discard a card, it's usually a card that you'd rather keep. So you know that if you put a card down, the next player may be able to pick it up. It's just, again, a card game with simple rule set and a lot of tough decisions, which is always appealing to me. So that's my number 43, Wyatt Earp.
Okay, my number 43 is one of, I believe, only 2 Stefan Feld games on my list. This is the Oracle of Delphi. I think right off the bat, the appeal to me is that it's a race game. I think there's something just so clear about that as a mechanic. You just have to get to the end before the other players. The way this works is there are a bunch of sort of randomized water tiles that are sort of laid out to form a map. And there are sort of different objectives that sort of intersperse across the map. So there might be sort of monsters you have to kill of different colors, or sort of idols you have to deliver to different locations. And you have to sort of complete all of these tasks before you return back to the beginning to win the game. This sort of works by sort of you have dice that you roll that determine sort of what actions you're going to be able to take on your turn. There are these god powers you're building towards that give you these very strong abilities. It's a really, really fun game. I think maybe the one issue that we've considered in the past is that it feels like it ends pretty closely, pretty tightly within a couple of turns of each other. But I also feel like all the times I've played it, the best player that is able to optimize their turn seems to win out in the end. The main draw of it for me is also when you look at the game, when you sort of see it laid out in the beginning, you sort of start to plan your route, right? So you sort of know, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do exactly that. Right. And then someone obviously messes you up at some point, and then you have to exactly, you sort of have to adjust on the fly. Yeah. It's a really cool game. That's the Oracle of Delphi.
I was excited when I tried this because it seemed like the dice would limit what you were capable of doing, but then you can basically just you can do whatever you want. It'll just be expensive to do it, and that unlocks too much brain burniness for me. But this is still one of his cooler games. Kalen approved. Stefan Feld. My number 43 best game of all time is The Game.
Wait, which game is it?
Mark, you can't make the same joke on every episode of
the
podcast.
people love it. The audience loves it.
No,
They're
no
cheering.
one's laughing.
Oh my God,
They're
they're
cheering.
standing ovation.
That's right, exactly.
The game is from the same designer as The Mind, which is the current hotness. But the game is a more gamery version of The Mind. There are 4 piles, 2 counting up to 100 and 2 counting down from 100. And on your turn, you must play 2 cards. You can't tell everyone else what cards you have, but you are trying to be as efficient as possible in how you play those cards out onto the board. So the best play on a 7 would be an 8, but Mark has a 23 that he's got to get rid of, and he comes in and screws up my pile. This is a ton of fun. There's a brand new edition with art from Kwanchai Morier from Pandasaurus Games. I really, really enjoy this. To me, this has legs that The Mind doesn't. I know some of our fans disagree with me on this, but I ran out on the mind after 4 or 5 plays, and the game, I just can't stop playing. Super enjoy it. That is the game.
There's a weird quirk of the game that I'm curious to get your take on, because you've mentioned this about Hanabi in the past, which is there's this thing where you're essentially not supposed to be communicating what you're going to do on your turn, but you sort of like go like, I really like this pile, and I really, really don't want you to touch this pile. And you're sort of like passively communicating without really just actually doing it. Right. Does that bug you?
Yeah, essentially, you're saying is the game cheating between your turns? Like,
is part of the game like just bending the rules?
Part of the game, is I think that's fine. I think that's fair. I understand. I think where it gets me, where it's a bugbear for me, and I'm making a joke because in the colonies we don't say bugbear.
And yet Mark knew exactly what I meant.
In Hanabi, if a group develops a system whereby you must follow these rules or you're a loser, you've gone way past your tryharding. You're no longer playing the game Hanabi. In the game, I have not seen it devolve that much. I think it's not as stressful of a game as Hanabi. Hanabi feels like you might be more prone to tryharding, for lack of a better word. You might be more prone to really wanting to even cheat at what is supposed to be a light, casual, almost activity once again, but it's still sort of try to beat your score. So I don't see that as a problem, but there is a softness there that the rule set, everyone just sort of smiles and says, isn't it fun? Because you can really cheat in the game, the Mind, Hanabi, in any of those games by sort of winking at each other. Right.
And I think that those moments are always funny, even if they're not technically like in the spirit of it. So who cares ultimately, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never had a problem with it. I think it just adds to like the metagame and the stories. And like you said, like we've had like games where we have these weird codes that emerge, and it's pretty funny. All right. My number 42 is by Eric Lang. This is Blood Rage. This is a dudes on the map action point game. The thing I like about Blood Rage is that the actions that you take are pretty simple. The combat is pretty straightforward. Everything is it's not too complicated in terms of like the mechanics, but it just feels so satisfying to, instead of like something along the lines of Risk where you're moving a bunch of units or you're accumulating a bunch of small units, you're just moving one large unit around the board, and that always feels so satisfying. It's so like impactful to move like this like big sculpt of like a monster, which is something I always like. I know one of the big complaints about Blood Rage is the card draft that you have before every round, and the fact that it introduces a lot of luck, and the fact that you can't really strategize sometimes because you don't know what cards you're going to get in the second round or third round. You can sort of see that as a opportunity to sort of think on the fly or plan on the fly, or it forces you to adapt to the cards that you're dealt and that you draft. So I don't mind that too much. I know it's not perfect. I know you can really be hurt on a bad draw or bad draft. But I just love how the actions are simple, but they still feel huge. They feel like you're moving these big pieces into a battle, and it just I always get like a thrill playing Blood Rage. So it's my number 42, Eric Lang's Blood Rage.
Yeah, I really like a couple things, Mark. First, I like that you didn't mention the Loki strategy, because my gosh, yes, we get it. You can win by losing in this game. Isn't that cool?
Right.
What I love about this game is how the card drafting forces you to decide between doing cool things and upgrading your faction.
Right.
I love upgrading my faction to my own detriment, because I'll be upgrading right until the end of the game when it no longer matters anymore. But just getting to go, my guys can do this from now on, forever, and having to balance that with actually just getting points or like or cards
scoring
to help you battle. It's sort of, it's like, well, I'd rather just upgrade, but I don't think that's going to help me win. And that leads me to it feeling more replayable, because each time I play, I want to sort of build it a little differently and see what I can come up with.
I think Blood Rage is a game that I want to like a lot more than I actually do, because you look at the components and the art, and it's obviously such a well-produced game, and then dudes on the map mixed with card drafting, it's all stuff I like. I think that the reason I haven't gravitated to it a couple of times I played it, I feel like it reminds me of sort of like a CCG meta game where there are incredibly powerful cards that you might know are in the deck, and then you get past one and then you're like, oh yeah, this is it. This is the card I need to take. and then other people don't necessarily know that, and it just leads to these massive point swings. Or even if it's not just from the perspective of knowledge, just the idea that someone gets exactly the card they need, and then that clinches the game for them.
Yeah.
And I think this is pretty true in the last game we played when you destroyed me.
Right.
And it's just never quite come together for me.
Yeah. I think a little bit of that can be mitigated by like a bash leader. Like if you see somebody taking over, if you see somebody employing a overpowered strategy, you can try to convince the table to attack them. But it's not the best solution, and sometimes it's not even a solution at all. So I get that. It's definitely a fair criticism, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like I want the version that just has slightly less of those massive
Right.
swings.
Yeah. But that would also take away from like the craziness.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's Blood Rage, my number 42.
Okay, my number 42 is a small game called Anomia. This is a very light party game. It's a very stressful game. It's funny, when Kalen was talking about Pictomania earlier, I was just like, that's what I like about Pictomania. I love these little sort of high-stress games where you feel like you're just like stumbling over everything you're doing. You're barely like scrounging through. The way this works is everyone has a little pile of cards, and on your turn, you flip over the top card. Each card has a sort of a topic, like either a city in the US or a type of food or a type of music. And they also each have a different random symbol on them. So you flip over your card, and if your symbol matches the card that's in front of any other player, you have to name a word or something that fits their topic before they name something that fits your topic. Right. So it becomes this moment of like this reveal, and then suddenly it's, oh wait, something's matching, and then just like all this mush of words comes out of your mouth, and it's good. So you sort of have to know like what you're going to say before the card comes out, then be watching for matches. And then the best part is you take that card when you win it. So that reveals another symbol. So suddenly there's another match around the table, and this just keeps chaining for a couple of turns. It's really, really cool. It's like fast and just like frantic and very stressful. I feel like not that many people know about it. It kind of flies under the radar a little bit. I like it a whole lot.
Yeah, I was pleased to see this. I see this at Barnes & Noble, so it's got some bit of a mass market thing going on. But I absolutely love Anomia. It was my number 51 game, so just missed my list. Big fan. Kalen, not so much?
Well, no, I'm just... when a reviewer goes, oh yeah, just barely missed my list, usually I just like roll my eyes, because you could say that about like 100 games.
Yeah,
but you have a list.
I actually have a
number
list.
through 600 of every game you've ever
played.
No, you don't.
I do.
Oh my god. Anomia is too stressful for me. I bow out. My number 42 best game of all time is called Lifeboat. That is not the negotiation game Lifeboats, but Lifeboat. This is a fantastic, fun, take-that style game where you are given 2 cards at the beginning of the game. You are in love with someone else at the table, and you hate someone else at the table. So looking at those cards and sort of looking around and seeing who you're going to be going after and who you're trying to ally with is hysterical. You take a series of actions, sort of essentially like punch someone overboard, or give someone a life vest, or give someone medicine, or get someone drunk. And all the actions are really, really silly, but this can lead to really extreme social situations. I have fought with my brother over this game, caused a huge screaming match. I think the round ended, and then he accused me of being mean to his wife. Which I find hilarious. But what I love about the game is just sort of survive to the end and then get more or less points based on who you love, who you hate. It's just not done very often, and I like that ambiguity as to what people are doing and why. And is Mark being cruel to me just because Mark wants to be cruel to me, which is usually what it is, or does he, in fact, hate me? That is Lifeboat.
Sort of harkening back to New Angels, right?
Yeah,
Same
absolutely.
Rivalry thing.
It's really cool and different and not done often enough.
Yeah, I'd like to play this. It's relatively short, or no?
I wish it was 30. It's less than an hour, I would say. But it's a little finicky, a little
take thatty.
Well, not just that. There's rough edges to it, to my favorites. I don't prefer the sort of mass-produced Monopoly clones that you've sort of told us about today.
Got it. You got it. Okay. So, Monopoly clone number 41 on my list is by Simone Luciani and Danielle Tascini. This is Tzolk'in, the Mayan Calendar. Can't talk about Tzolk'in without talking about the gears. There are actual little gears on the board that all connect to each other. They all move each other, as gears tend to do with one another. This is a worker placement game. What you're doing is you're placing your workers on the gears. The farther down you place them on the gear, the longer they stay on the board, but the more benefits you get. And then finally, when the worker works his way all the way up, he comes off the gear and you get him back to place elsewhere. So there's a give and take about deciding whether or not to place a worker down the gear. You won't have them for a while, but you're going to reap greater benefit, or just to put them at the end of the gear, which means you'll get them back right away to place again, but you're not going to get so much placing them like that. Another thing I really like about this game is the fact that you always have to place a worker, so you can't just place all your workers at the end of the gears and just sit back and wait for all these benefits to come rolling in. If it comes back to your turn and you don't have a worker, you must take one off of a gear and place them elsewhere. So that's nice. That forces you to play both short-term and long-term, which is nice. It's just a beautiful game, really well designed. That whole timing aspect of worker placement is something that's rare and interesting to think about. And so that's my number 41, Tzolk'in. I suspect we will hear more about this later.
It is a fantastic game. Yeah, I'll probably have a lot to say about it substantially later in the series.
Yes.
All I know is to use the corn strategy to win.
Yep, that's Tzolk'in.
Just broke Tzolk'in.
Yep.
There it is, guys. Now you'll be better than
Don't know
your
why
friends.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
My number 41 is Panic on Wall Street. This is a really fun game that I played a lot of about 5 years ago, and I haven't played it since because the people who had it moved away, and it's really hard to get a hold of. Like it's
expensive, right?
It's expensive. Yeah, I see copies of it going for $100, and it's not a $100 retail game.
I have it.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Wait, no, you don't.
I've told you this on the podcast. I'm pretty sure that I have it. I've said this like 3 times.
Wait, you
to
own Panic on Wall Street?
Yes. And every time I
Why?
say it, you guys are surprised and say we should play it, and then evidently completely forget about it. So
Well, because you haven't brought it to game
Yeah,
night.
why don't you let us play it, Mark?
that's a good point,
You're
actually.
gonna keep it for yourself. Keep it mint for
I will.
to trade.
Yeah,
No, I've played it.
flipped
I've played it with others.
Oh,
Wait,
other
who are you
people.
playing it with?
People who remember that I have it.
So what Panic on Wall Street is it's a game where you're trading sort of stocks. You're divided into sort of two, I'm going to say teams, but you're not actually working against each other. So there's managers and investors, I think is what they're called. What's quite cool about that is there are actually 2 winners for the game. The best manager wins and the best investor wins. Each round sort of characterized by this sort of like 2-minute like frantic stock trading session of just shouting at the people at the table. So the managers are being like, okay, you have to buy this from me, I'm going to give it to you for this. And then someone else says, no, I'll give it to you for this. And then the investors are trying to sort of get the stocks that they think are going to become more valuable, because at the end of every round, like as in the stock market, the value of each of the stocks shifts based on like sort of die rolls. So it's this really fun, it's so loose, but it's just really shouty and really, really fun. Yeah. There's a lot of just people like undercutting people. It's like ridiculous strategies like, no, you can do this for me and I'll pay this off later. And that never works out because it just feels like the right idea at the moment. Which is never
You're just caught up
right.
in the wave of like.
Yeah,
buying
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
You're just trying to undercut someone even if it's bad for you. I think, Kalen, you would really, really, really like this.
Yeah, I've wanted to play it. Sounds similar-ish to like Ladies and Gentlemen. I know it's not the same thing, but they're sort of like 2 different games happening at the same time in this vaguely party-ish way.
Yeah.
Right.
Sounds great.
And I've heard people describe it similar to Pit, which I haven't played, but I know you like. So, yeah.
I love Pit.
That is Panic on Wall Street, my 41.
All right.
Take us home.
The last game of today's episode. Number 41, my 41 favorite game of all time. I think I said favoriteth.
Mix it up.
Is Diamant, or as we call it in the colonies, Incan Gold.
Yes.
But I prefer the more beautiful Diamant version. This is a very simple press your luck game where you can choose to stay or go in the cave. Everybody is an explorer going into the cave looking for treasure, and you get nothing if you get too many enemy cards, essentially. But if you leave, you get all the gems that are available. But if multiple players leave, you both get screwed. You get some gems together, but then some still get left for further adventurers who are braver than you are. I love that because it inevitably ends up being a situation where you're like, Mark, I'm not going back. I'm going all the way. Like I'm staying, Mark. And then you leave and take everything, and convincing someone else that, yeah, you're still in it to win it is sort of the fun of the game. It's a very, very silly, casual, can play up to, I believe, 7 or 8 players, and I've had a great time with it every time. Definitely a permanent part of my collection. That is Diamant.
Classic push your luck game
Very
for
good.
sure.
Or Incan Gold.
Yes.
For those of us who live in
Stateside.
stateside.
Yes.
I almost said the colonies again. I still can't remember which is right and which is not, but that's fine. Thanks so much for joining us for this special HD recording episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. We are a board game podcast that releases every Thursday. So if you're looking for a new board game podcast, feel free to check us out. We're having a ton of fun and wanted to do the top 50 of all time, as has been requested by those who listen to the podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. There's a Board Game Geek Guild. We're everywhere that you want to be. That's someone else's slogan.
Yeah, what is that? It was an old.
It's not our slogan. And yeah, thanks so much. And special thank you to Heart Society Music for the intro and outro music, which is the song What's on Your Mind, Kid from their album Wake the Queens. You can find them at heartsocietymusic.com.
See you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Until we change our clothes. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm high. I'm ready. I want you to save me from myself.
So, on to my number 49. My 49 is one of 3 2018 games on my list. And now we're halfway through my co-ops. This is 2 of 4 co-ops. So 2 games in. And
There's a
halfway through.
co-op 18XX game.
This is Chronicles of Crime.
What?
Yeah.
Did you not just say?
What?
I thought you just said 18XX.
No.
What?
I said this is one of 3
Two 2018 games.
Oh, I thought you were tryharding already. When you're like, there's 17 18XX games on my list. I'm sorry.
There's only 15.
Why don't you start over and then
Okay.
maybe that's it.
I'll take. Sure.
I was just literally not listening to you. Sorry,
Yeah, that's
go
fine.
for it.